Back at it. 2022 off-season coverage is starting right now. Got home late from SoFi last night, had a lot of writing to do. And then this morning we just had exit interviews with the 49ers, and those things took a long time. We started at 11:30, and it's 2:11 p.m. now. And I said I was going to start this live as soon as all the exit interviews were over, and they didn't really end till 2 o'clock. So 2.5 hours of exit interviews, exit physicals going down back at the facility. A lot to package, a lot to process after the 49ers season ends. The magical run over the wild card and the divisional rounds ends in the NFC Championship game. 20-17 against the Rams. I know most people watching, probably 49ers fans, you're probably in that state of shock, that state of grief that happens after massive implications are lost. I mean, I'll even type in what I wrote before the game because we could kind of revisit this right now. This is going to go into the bucket with other painful memories of past lost NFC Championship games. So before the game, I know a lot of you read this. I wrote, it can all go horribly wrong for the 49ers later today. I'm sure a lot of people are going to stop watching right now. I'm going to see the viewership count just dip as I start to read this, unless you guys are masochists, which you probably are. The only reason you're on YouTube is because you want to torture yourself more right now. But here's what I said. You don't need to be reminded of what Richard Sherman did in his Seahawks uniform, or what Kyle Williams did in the rain against the Giants, or how Jimmy Johnson hooted and hollered about the Cowboys in Candlestick Park's locker room, or how Roger Craig fumbled in January 1991, or how officials called pass interference and then holding against Ronnie Lott to doom the 1983 season. Well, add one to the list. Add yesterday's performance to the list. Whenever you lose an NFC Championship game by a field goal, by only 3 points, when you could start to ruminate over individual things that went wrong that might have turned the outcome of the game, you're going to have a game, that as a fan is going to torture you for probably a long time if you're that type of personality. But, it might not have been quite as painful as Richard Sherman tipping Kaepernick's pass in 2013, but for some people it probably was. I don't know where you're going to rank it in the list of painful losses, but in the big picture, the 49ers were either going to have an exhilarating triumph on Sunday or a devastating loss, and they got the devastating loss. And there's obviously a lot in common with the Super Bowl 54 in Miami 2 years ago, when the 49ers had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter over the Kansas City Chiefs. And then that turned into a loss because they just gave up the massive run to end the game. Well, this time they had a 10-point lead and it turned into a 3-point loss. They couldn't respond to the 13-0 run for the Rams at the end of the game. And I have to say that the 49ers got a taste of their own medicine from the Rams. I think, I'm not going to belabor the X's and O's of this game for all too long. I want to spin this forward moving ahead, but I think it's really important to credit the Rams for what they did, because we saw 6 straight wins for the 49ers, including 2 straight wins this year in which the 49ers had been the better team by far. They dominated 7 of 9 quarters of play against LA. And they did that by ball hogging, right? They hogged the ball on offense. They converted third downs. They're able to run. They're able to really tire out the Rams so that their defensive line could fire. And the Rams defensive line wasn't firing because it was, worn down by the 49ers run game. I think that LA was able to impose what the 49ers had imposed on them in this game. And you just go to, the third down numbers, 11 of 18. Stafford killed the 49ers on third down. But the fact that the Rams were able to actually run the ball in the first half, and they had only managed 50 yards in week 10. They had only managed 2.5 yards per carry in week 18. But in the first half of this game, they were at 75 yards rushing, maybe 73 yards rushing at 4.5 a carry. 18 carries, 73 yards in the first half. Total role reversal from the previous games. The Rams even had an 18-play touchdown drive. Remember, the 49ers had an 18-play touchdown drive against the Rams in week 10. So it was LA who had 42 plays in the first half and only 20 for the 49ers. Not the other way around. And I think that's what really set the tone for this game moving into the final 30 minutes. So yes, the 49ers were ahead at halftime, 10-7, But think about how close they were to not being ahead. You had the interception that was tipped into there by K'Wan Williams, picked off by Jimmy Ward. You had the drop by Cooper Kupp of what would have been a touchdown. Both of those things go in the Rams' favor. They're up big again at halftime. And I think if you looked at the stats of the first half, the 49ers had explosiveness, but they didn't have that methodical hold of the game, which is what they need. And even though they were able to somewhat, establish it in that third quarter, this game was tenuous. And it became really tenuous, obviously, after the Azeez Al-Shaair personal foul penalty, which I think was the real turning point in this one, right? It's 17-7 after Garoppolo hits George Kittle for the touchdown. First play of the subsequent Rams drive, Al-Shaair gets a taunting penalty. And it's quickly 17-14. And then the 49ers offense goes into the tank. And that's what Tim Kawakami wrote about. Obviously, when you go through the aftermath of this and what it means, well, we knew this was coming, that this was obvious this season, unless the 49ers somehow got to the Super Bowl and won it. This was going to be very likely the end of the road for Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's going to speak to the media on Tuesday. Trey Lance already spoke today, said that they're going to be best friends for the rest of his life. And, there's still this big outpouring of support for Garoppolo. But I think that the larger scheme here, the larger picture that we have to look at is, have the 49ers successfully emulated the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes dynamic with Garoppolo and Trey Lance? Well, we won't know if Trey Lance is going to become Mahomes or a player comparable to that until he, actually has a chance to take the field as the starting quarterback. 49ers can hope that he's 3/4 of the player that Mahomes is, and I think they're going to be really happy moving forward. But as far as setting up the dynamic this year, I think that the 49ers are really happy with how that plan worked out. Remember when Alex Smith started over a rookie Mahomes in 2017, the Kansas City Chiefs lost in the wild card round under Smith. So he took them to the playoffs, couldn't get any further. Well, if you just look at this within context, the 49ers got all the way to the NFC Championship game during a season in which they're developing their prized rookie quarterback, and they trusted Jimmy Garoppolo, to take the reins and get them as far as possible. And they got as far as they possibly could. And there were mistakes made yesterday in all phases of the game, and the Rams definitely were the better team in that game on Sunday. They weren't the better team in the two meetings during the regular season, but when it mattered the most, the Rams were able to flip that script. Garoppolo wasn't good enough. I thought that the biggest miss for Jimmy Garoppolo actually wasn't what everybody's focusing on at the end of the game. I think the game was already over by that point. Like I said, the Rams had already won and controlled game flow by that final drive. They were teeing off on the 49ers offensive line. It was a desperation heave to JaMychal Hasty. Jimmy Garoppolo's trying to avoid 4th and 20, which I'm not so sure the 49ers would have been able to convert. So I thought that the biggest Garoppolo miss came early in the game when he had George Kittle on the post pattern. And Kittle, I think, scores a touchdown if that throws on target. And if that throws on target and that is a score, I think the 49ers are playing this game downhill instead of uphill, because they have an early lead. They have the crowd behind them. So if there's a Jimmy Garoppolo miss that, people want to be really upset about, then it's that one right there, right? It's that one against to George Kittle early in the game. But there were so many misses for the 49ers as a team in this football game. Again, they weren't stopping the run early. Cam Akers had a good day in the first half of the Rams. Jaquiski Tartt dropped the interception. The 49ers couldn't cover nearly as well as they had entering this game. Ambry Thomas and Emmanuel Mosley were just not up to par against Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr. Jimmy Ward had a really bad play and a bad penalty after the Tartt dropped interception. Rams had nearly 400 yards of offense and 76 plays, which is what I had here. This was a failure defensively and offensively for the 49ers after that offense. I thought the second to last drive was especially bad. That's the one where they had the delay of game penalty, where the third down was snapped when they weren't even ready for it, really. Everybody looked discombobulated. It looked like a shell-shocked team in the fourth quarter, and they met their demise at the end of the road. But it came at the end of a fun ride for the 49ers, that's for sure. Wild card round over Dallas on the road. Any year you could beat Dallas and then Green Bay, both on the road in subsequent weeks in the playoffs. It's going to be a year that creates some memories, that creates some something that fans and players alike are going to remember for a long time, which I think is why the 49ers are talking the way that they are. They're already waxing poetic about this season. And, it was just 24 hours ago that everybody was waxing poetic about the season. And I think there's a sense of finality and a sense of emptiness that happens at the end of any professional sports ride, right? At the end of anything that's kind of just ends and makes you feel empty, right? And I think that's what definitely the 49ers feel. I think that's what their fans feel right now. But the further we get away from the finality of the crushing loss to the Rams in the NFC Championship game, the further, the more likely it is and the easier it is going to be to appreciate what the 49ers were able to do this year. And that's not just beat Dallas and Green Bay on the road in subsequent weeks. They also beat LA, the same Rams team that they lost to, in a essential playoff game, in a do or die Week 18 game. So that was 3 straight wins. In fact, in the history of football, that had never been done before. A team had never won 3 straight games on the road against opponents with 12 wins or more on the season. So the 49ers had to make history just to get to the title game. They would have had to have made even more history to make it to the Super Bowl, where Joe Burrow would have been awaiting them, but they couldn't get it done. They couldn't finish the game in the fourth quarter, and people are going to point at, a ton of different things. You're going to point at Garoppolo. You're going to point at the offensive line. I mean, Trent Williams played this game on a high ankle sprain and gave up 5 pressures, but it was still a valiant effort. You're going to point at the defense, right? You're going to point at the cornerbacks, the safeties for not covering well enough. K'Wan Williams not having a great game beyond that tip on the pass to Cooper Kupp in the end zone that turned into the interception. Other than that, it was 11 catches for 140 plus on 14 targets to Cooper Kupp. Nobody could cover Odell Beckham. People are going to point at all kinds of different stuff in this game. But at the end of the day, as a team, the 49ers just ran out of gas. They weren't good enough. They played with fire for a long time. We said this. We said that 49ers football was torture. Well, the more you push the limit, the more likely you are to eventually find it. And I think they eventually found the limit of playing with torture in that second matchup with the Rams in 3 weeks in the fourth quarter of this game. So that makes us spin it forward to the offseason. Obviously, there's going to be focus on individual plays, and that's probably going to happen forever. People love to look at individual plays to create a narrative, to make things more dramatic. But this is all about what the 49ers collectively as a team can do now moving forward in what's going to be a fascinating few months, because the salary cap tap dance is coming. Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa are in line for big money. The 49ers currently, with Jimmy Garoppolo counted, only have about $5 million in 2022 cap space, with about 34 or 35 players currently under contract. So they're going to have to sign a lot more guys. They're going to have to pay, obviously, Deebo and Nick Bosa in all likelihood. And they're going to have to find a way to make everything fit, at least until the cap is expected to explode in 2023. So it's going to take maneuvering. There probably will be cap casualties. Jimmy Garoppolo is most likely to be the biggest cap casualty, with $25 million potentially saved there. Trey Lance already talked today. We'll hear from Garoppolo. We'll hear from Kyle Shanahan. We'll hear from John Lynch tomorrow on Tuesday, and we'll see just how the 49ers go about this all. I mean, you think about some of the free agents that are going to be depending on the board. DJ Jones is going to be a really big one, right? You wonder what the 49ers are going to do with him. You think that they need him there in the middle. Jaquiski Tart, obviously, yesterday he was so distraught. And so, he took all the blame for that dropped interception with about 10 minutes left. He's going to be a free agent too. What do the 49ers do there? How do they continue approaching the cornerback position? You have Mosley under contract for another season, and then you have the rookie Ambry Thomas on the other side. Do you want to bring in more veteran help? They obviously thought that Jason Verrett would be necessary this year. He tore his ACL, so he wasn't available this year after week 1, but his deal's also up. Do they bring in another veteran to bolster that room? Can they even afford another veteran? How do they keep these pieces together defensively to continue firing at what was an impressive level up until this championship game against the Rams, where the 49ers ran out of gas? Because when I look at the big picture for the 49ers, I see a comparison to 2019. in the fashion that the 2019 team that went to the Super Bowl and then lost to the Chiefs had a dominant postseason run. And, everybody at the start of this 2021 season was obsessed with comparing the 49ers to the 2019 49ers. Oh, how could they replicate that run? How could they be a little bit better? How could they do this? How could they do that? Is the D-line at 2019's level? Is the offensive run game at that Raheem Mostert 2019 level? And obviously that obsession and those comparisons fell by the wayside when the 49ers dropped to 2-4 and then to 3-5. But as this team surged back, it was like, okay, wait, how good are they? Because they started winning, and then they got into the playoffs, and they started winning road games in the playoffs. They beat Dallas, who was the number one DVOA team. They beat the Packers with the presumptive MVP, Aaron Rodgers, at Lambeau in the snow, and then they had a chance. They were very close to making another Super Bowl. So the question was, how good are these guys? And I think it's an apples and oranges comparison between 2021 and 2019, because 2019 to me was a dominant football team. You saw that with how easily they breezed through both the regular season and the NFC playoffs, whereas 2021 ended up being a gritty football team that was forged by the fire that it went through. And maybe the defensive lines ended up in the same spot, two dominant defensive lines by the end of the road, but it took the 2021 one a lot of development over the course of the season, a lot of that forging through fire over the course of the season. They weren't the ready-made product that the 49ers were in week one. And even then, I think we saw yesterday that the 49ers just weren't nearly as dominant as a whole defensively than they were in 2019. In 2019, they saw Aaron Rodgers in the NFC Championship game and totally snuffed him out. There was no snuffing out happening in this game yesterday. The Rams had, they had their way offensively, 200-yard receivers, over 4 yards per carry in the first half. When the 49ers knew what was at stake in the second half, and they stepped up and they stopped the run, but it was a little too late. When you give up 11 of 18 third downs, 76 offensive plays, I think that debate's over. I don't think this defense ever, got back up to the level that 2019 was at. And, and the run game, 2019 also had this dominant run game with Raheem Mostert scoring 4 touchdowns in the NFC title. Yesterday, the 49ers got stonewalled at the line of scrimmage. I think it was like 2.4 yards per carry. They couldn't run the football against the Rams. So you didn't have the same dominance when it mattered most in the NFC title game this year as the 49ers had in the past. And okay, that's all great. It made for dramatic football. They had the grit. They got through the wild card round. They got through the divisional round, but still they weren't as good as they were 2 years ago. And that leads me to this offseason. What will the 49ers do now, given the salary cap constraints, given the fact that they're probably moving on to the rookie quarterback on the roster so they have more money to spend elsewhere? How are they going to make this roster dominant again, at least in one phase? Because they weren't dominant this year. You got it. If you're a 49ers fan, I'm sure you're so proud of this team for fighting, for scrapping, for getting through Dallas, or for getting through LA in week 18, for getting through Dallas, for getting through Green Bay in the snow. But you have to look at yourself in the mirror and you have to say, well, this team just didn't have, that insane firepower that 19 did to make it all the way to the Super Bowl. And hey, it's really hard to have that insane firepower. Not sure anybody in the league has it, right? Kansas City just lost to Cincinnati yesterday. So it is a parity-filled league. It was one of the wildest seasons I've ever experienced, maybe the most parity-filled season I've experienced. So maybe just having one dominant phase of the game is what gets you that ticket. And the 49ers this year, they weren't dominant anywhere. They're balanced everywhere. They got the special teams in Green Bay. They didn't have it for most of the year, but they just didn't have that one true spear that would make them a slam dunk in the playoffs. And even though that might be impossible to or very hard to attain, they had it 2 years ago. And I'm excited to see what they do this offseason to try to rediscover that touch again. And I think it goes back to this. I'm going to talk to you guys again tomorrow after we hear after we hear Jimmy Garoppolo and talk, and Kyle Shanahan talk, and John Lynch talk, because we're going to get the first tentative blueprint for the offseason, how the 49ers are going to try to structure this roster, what the exact plan for Garoppolo is, what the exact plan for Lance is. We're going to get an idea, right? We're going to start to move toward that tomorrow. And once we do start to get some of those ideas, then we can start thinking about, okay, how can this roster improve and take that next step so they're more ready to more closely emulate the run that the 2019 team went on through the NFC Championship game than the tenuous run that this super exciting but very torture-generating 2021 49ers team went through. You play with fire for too long, eventually you're going to get burnt. And the 49ers played with fire week in, week out. They set NFL history by winning those 3 games in a row on the road over those 12-win teams, all in 49ers football torture fashion, but they couldn't get it done in the NFC title game. So I'm excited to see what's next. I'm going to cover it really closely here. Hopefully you guys can check out some of the stuff on The Athletic. I'm going to check out a few of the comments here if you guys have any questions. But other than that, I have to go catch a flight. So I'm going to sign off a little bit earlier, and then we'll have a ton of video content coming this offseason. So make sure that you all subscribe to the channel. I'm going to answer some questions here. We're going to have dedicated Q&As. We hit 10K this week. We had like 5K last week. It's been insane. I've loved the outpouring of support. I've loved all the new people that I met along the way this year. Thank you for subscribing to the coverage, whether it be on The Athletic or on YouTube or following along on Twitter or Instagram, wherever you like to do that kind of stuff. It's been really neat. And then whenever somebody comes up to me in person, it's always good to put a face behind the screen name. And it really has been a nice little community. That's what we're trying to foster here as we talk some 49ers football ahead of what might be the second most interesting offseason in recent memory. I think last year might have been the most interesting one. This one, it's going to be fascinating again. I don't know if it could supersede one in which the 49ers traded up to number 3, though. So we'll see. All right, any questions? Let's see. Questions. This is a good one. What's Jimmy's trade value right now? I think it's going to be higher than I've maintained throughout the whole time. I think it's going to be higher than a lot of people have, tried to insist. You think about what Carson Wentz fetched. You could go down the list of quarterbacks. I mean, even Sam Darnold fetched quite a return, didn't he? So quarterbacks are going to be in high demand this offseason. There's going to be a lot of openings around the league, and the 49ers are going to be in a good seller's market if that's what they indeed choose to do. So I think it's going to be higher than a lot of people expect. And I think the 49ers, to be honest, they're happy with how their quarterback plan worked out. I've said this for weeks now, but Trey Lance wasn't going to start this year. Trey Lance wouldn't have led this team to the NFC Championship this year. And Trey Lance has a chance to be really good in the future. So you had him be able to learn like a sponge under Jimmy Garoppolo. They have a great relationship. I mean, I don't see how else the 49ers could have executed this without, completely disrupting the team with a building project this year. And for culture purposes, you want to make the run that they did. Guys are going to be better thanks to the fact they went through the fire, thanks to the fact that they beat Green Bay, thanks to the fact that they beat Dallas, thanks to the fact that they were in the NFC title game and they lost a tough one. It's going to help the 49ers moving forward. Certainly a lot better than a 6-10, 7-9 season, whatever it would have been had they thrown Trey Lance into the fire a little bit too soon. So I think that they're happy with that. And I think that they're really excited about Trey too, because I think he made a lot of progress on the scout team. Sir Juju says it's a team loss. Mistakes didn't help the situation either. Absolutely. I mean, you could point at every single phase of the game, maybe minus special teams, which might be the great irony of all this. Because, Debo was back on a kick return, didn't go well, but still, that wasn't a game-changing play. But offense and defense and every single position unit, you could find a mistake, right? I could go through them all. Offensive line gave up too much pressure. Trent Williams was playing on a high ankle sprain. Not enough rushing production. Garoppolo made the critical error for him, I thought, was that miss of Kittle in the first half. Debo, you can't find anything wrong with Debo in this game. You can't hardly find anything wrong all season. He dropped 10 passes. Okay, maybe that was it. But, he was good. So maybe the receivers, because Ayuk made a play too, are really good for the 49ers. But across the board on offense, you had problems. Probably have a problem with Shanahan not going for it on 4th and 2, or at least not doing something that better move the chains there midfield. Defense. Yeah, the line might have been okay, but they didn't get the kind of production outside of Bosa and Ebukam they'd been getting because they weren't stopping the run in the first half. Linebacker level, Azeez Al-Shire, that was a devastating personal foul penalty if you look back on it. And the secondary obviously left a lot to be desired. So I agree with you. If I could find blame at every single level of this, probably means that it was indeed a team loss. The Rams did what I thought Aaron Rodgers would, pass every play. Well, they didn't pass every play in the first half, and that's key to remember. The Rams ran 17 times in the first half. The 49ers from week 8 up until yesterday were the number 1 run defense in football, but the Rams found a way to rush 17 times for over 70 yards in the first half. That was a big deal. That set the tone of this game. Matthew Stafford only got hit 13 times in week 18, only got hit 9 times in this game. If you don't think those 4 extra hits in week 18 made a difference, and both of which were 3-point close games, you're crazy. You know, I'm not calling you crazy. No representation. I think that's your screen name. I'm just saying in general, you're crazy if you don't think those 4 hits were the difference. And the reason that Stafford was insulated from those 4 hits is because the Rams are actually able to run the football this time. So there's your big difference, I thought. The Rams, they were in the 200 yards offensively in both week 10 and week 18. And they were at 396, just to give you a rudimentary total in the championship game. So give Sean McVay credit. He came out with a game plan that turned the advantage on its head. All right, guys, I'm going to get to a lot more questions later on. We're going to have, we have a whole off season to do really, really informative stuff on the channel. And I hope to bring you stuff every day. You know, we could have shows every day. We can have Q&As whenever you want them. We can have a good time with this. We'll let the channel grow. So everybody subscribe right now. I've got to run. Hit that button, though, and I hope that you enjoyed this season. It's been a pleasure launching the channel this year, and hopefully you get to enjoy some time now without football. I know for a lot of people who are big-time fans of this, I know it's tough. I know that I opened this by talking about Kyle Williams and Richard Sherman, and I'm sure you either quit watching or want to kill me right now, but that's okay because I'm on the other side of a screen and you can't kill me. So it's all good. I'm safe right here, and I think that you guys will let it kind of wear off over the course of a few days, go through the processes of grief after the NFC Championship game loss. It's one of the toughest single games in sport to lose because you're just short of the Super Bowl. Sometimes even tougher to lose in the Super Bowl because sometimes you just want to make it to the Super Bowl and you want to feel your team in that spotlight. Well, you were that close and you didn't make it. So hopefully you guys are able to shake this one off. I know it sucks if you're a 49ers fan. So everybody take care, subscribe. We'll talk to you guys soon. See you later.